And to all our viewers out there, we want to thank you for making News Nation the fastest growing cable news network in the country. We appreciate you watching. Back with more after this. The trial for Ghislaine Maxwell began today. Maxwell, the accused accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein, who committed suicide in his prison cell while awaiting his own sex trafficking trial in 2019. Maxwell facing multiple sex trafficking-related charges, including sex trafficking of a minor and enticing multiple minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts. 4 alleged victims expected to testify in the trial, and the shadow of Jeffrey Epstein will likely loom over this case. Maxwell has vigorously denied any wrongdoing, could face up to 70 years in prison if convicted. So the question jurors must answer, was Maxwell a victim herself or an accomplice? Joining me now for more on this, a sexual abuse attorney and survivor herself, one of the first known victims of Dr. Larry Nassar. It's good to have Sarah Klein back with us today. Sarah, what are you going to be watching for in this trial?
Yeah, so today I found really interesting. We got a sense of sort of the stance the defense is going to take and the stance that the prosecution is going to take. What I found interesting about the defense's strategy is it's very, very typical. They're going to go to unreliable memories. Their expert in that has been on the stand over 300 times defending in what, in my opinion, are the indefensible other child predators out there. The jury in Weinstein didn't buy her testimony, and it will be interesting to see what they do here. The other thing the defense is doing, which is really interesting, but very, very common, is making Maxwell the victim, making her the scapegoat who is only on trial because Epstein is dead. Defense counsel even said Maxwell is filling the hole and filling the empty chair as Epstein is gone. Now, the prosecution today came out swinging. They put on the stand a pilot who flew privately for Epstein for many, many years, starting in the early 90s up until 2019. And he set the scene that Maxwell and Epstein were a couple of sorts, always together, flying all over the world together. I thought he did a great job. Only 30 minutes of testimony, but he'll be back on the stand tomorrow morning.
I'm sure the testimony will be very graphic, Sarah, but as I understand it, at least some of, if not many of the victims who will be testifying in this case will claim in their testimony that Maxwell was in some ways worse as far as this grooming than Epstein was.
Absolutely. And that's something we learned today, too. The prosecution plans to talk about grooming. And the grooming comes from someone that you deeply trust, who earns your respect, who takes care of you, the nurturer of sorts. And so we're going to learn about that concept, and we're going to learn about the behaviors associated with grooming. And I think that they're right. The enablers are oftentimes much worse than the perpetrators themselves.
What role do you think Epstein will play in this? I mean, it's kind of a fine line, as you said, for prosecutors in this case to delineate, because much of, since his death, is as you pointed out, going to come down onto Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously his shadow looms large in this courtroom, but what people need to understand, this is not a trial about whether or not Epstein raped children. This trial is a very, very narrow in scope, and it's something I believe the judge has done very well, which is defining that this is only determining whether or not Maxwell helped Epstein recruit and abuse 4 underage girls. And so as long as we focus on the purpose of this trial, I do believe that the Epstein House of Horrors is not going anywhere. And I suspect, you know, it's going to be very interesting to see sort of what happens with enabler number 1. And I don't think she's going to be the first. There might be more charges down the road as we learn more.
What about the people who have reportedly been linked to Epstein? Do you think more comes out of this trial than we knew beforehand?
You know, again, this trial is going to be very, very limited in scope. It depends on what evidence is presented. I heard rumors that her little black book of phone numbers is going to come up in this trial. I don't think that this is going to be about big names swinging around the courtroom. Again, this is about whether or not she enticed and was a co-conspirator and engaged in essentially trafficking these children and coerce them into engaging in illegal sexual activity. So as long as we keep the focus on her and, all of the good reporting done on this keeps the focus on her, I think it is going to be something where we might see a possible prison sentence.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, she could face up to 70 years, as I understand. And I think this trial, as I saw, could last about 6 weeks thereabouts. Sarah Klein, thanks for your insight and input. Sexual abuse attorney and survivor herself. It's great to have you again. We'll be in touch.
Thanks so much.
Shifting gears now to another high-profile trial starting today. That's the trial involving former Empire star Jussie Smollett. Smollett accused of making false reports to authorities back in 2019. He told police he was beaten up by two men, the victim of a racist and homophobic attack in downtown Chicago. After investigating, police said it was a hoax set up by Smollett himself. Joining me now for more on the case, our friend, former state and federal prosecutor Pat Brady. Pat, this case was big nationwide, but it was crazy in Chicago for a lot of reasons that we'll get into here. But the first question is, why are we at this point with a trial?
I assume that Dan Webb, a very prominent, probably the best prosecutor in the country at one point, made an offer that he didn't want, so they're going to roll the bones and go to trial. That's the only chance he's got.
By that, you mean he is sticking to his story, and he's going to go down in flames if that's what it means?
I would think so. And this is a great example of you've got a very good judge, you've got a fantastic prosecutor, and a very narrowly focused case, kind of like the Epstein case.
So this is going to have to, I'm assuming, unravel at some point, right? I mean, he said this is going to happen, and we have these two brothers who say Smollett paid him $3,500. They're going to testify, right?
Yeah, if you took these two brothers, they're right out of central casting, the people you'd go hire to go beat somebody up. I mean, it was, but that night, I remember I was downtown that night. It was freezing.
Right. It was one of the coldest nights